Welcome back again to Three's In. This next story I have for you took place just after I took over as the operations officer in the 560th Flying Train Squadron in the spring of 1986. I was designated to be the new squadron commander in the 12th Student Squadron, but we had some handover-takeover issues, and Rick Lanier was going to follow in behind me in Stanival. And so I was more or less in a holding pattern, and they needed an ops officer for a couple months, so they put me in the job. And I loved that job. That was probably one of the best jobs I had. I got to work with the troops, and I just had a ball in that job. Anyway, this one day, I'm sitting in the office, which was a rarity for me. The squadron commander walks in and says, "Bob, we got a little bit of a problem." I said, "What's that?" Now, this guy was a grip and grinner. He loved to shake hands and smile at people, pat them on the back, this, that, and the other. I didn't have time for a lot of that. Tried it once, didn't like it. Anyway, so he says, we got this DV out, about ready to take off, distinguished visitor. And he said, Howard's taking him for the airplane ride. And he says, I was out there saying goodbye to him, grip and grin. And I noticed he didn't have any gloves on. So I looked up in the front seat at Howard, and I kind of waved and got his attention, and I pointed at him, pointed at my hand, no gloves. And Howard just went like that and taxied on out, and so be it. So I said, okay. He says, don't you think you ought to have a talk with him when he gets back? And I said, well, I suppose I should. So that's where we left it. Then Howard comes back, and they have some more grip and grinning and this, that, and the other. Give the guy, the DV, a plaque and tell him how great it was to have him and so forth. It probably was. Anyway, I asked Howard to swing by the office when he had a second. And so he came in shortly thereafter. And I said, now, Howard, how many hours do you have? And he says, about 1,900. And I said, right. And of those 1,900 hours, how many hours have you flown that airplane without wearing gloves? And he says, I don't know if I've flown it any hours without wearing gloves. I said, well, why'd you take the back seater for a ride when he didn't have gloves? He said, well, sir, nothing says we have to wear them. Wrong answer. Wrong answer, you dumbass. Anyway, I didn't say that. I said, well, you're probably right, but I've just never paid much attention to it because I wear gloves every time I fly. Anyway, be that as it may. Wrong answer. So anyway, I said, Howard, I just took over the job here a couple, 3 days ago. And I said, I know you're off to the airlines. I said, so having you come in for an ass chewing really doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for me. I said, for me, it makes me look like a bad guy to chew somebody out for something as stupid as that. I said, I'm going to reserve my ass kickings for somebody that really deserves it. And I said, for you, with your airline slot, it'd be like chewing out Jell-O. It might sit there and quiver a little bit, but it's not going to make a difference. So I said, why don't you just take off out of here, and it'll resolve itself, okay? You got the point. So off he goes. Meanwhile, a few hours later, I head into Three's Inn, and we had our usual gathering there, the real Three's Inn. So I'm sitting in there, and I'm telling them the story of the commander coming in, really perplexed about what to do about Howard because he flew with a guy without gloves. And the first thing I thought of was, wonder if he's ever thought of this signal here, which means cut the engines. Cut the engines. Then go up and say, look, we're going to go in and get a pair of gloves for him. You can start up again. Not a big problem. But he just didn't think of that. And then I just told him, I said, that was really dumb. And I said, I would have thought he would have been more conscientious than that, and this, that, and the other. So when I'd ragged on him enough, I just let it go. Well, come about 3-4 days later, maybe the next week, Howard comes into my office. He says, sir, may I talk to you a minute? And I said, absolutely. Come on in and have a seat. What's up? What's on your mind? He says, sir, he says, the next time I screw up, he says, will you just chew my ass and then we'll be done with it? And I said, why is that? And he said, well, the guys are just giving me a ration of crap for taking that guy for a ride without gloves. And I'm thinking to myself, that was the idea. Anyway, he says, they're calling me all kinds of things. And he says, it's humiliating. And he said, I didn't deserve that. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did, and probably a little bit more. Anyway, I just kind of let that go and chuckled and thought, I'm going to add that to my lecture on management techniques. So be it. Good to see everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon on the channel.